New court documents show that Dwayne Keefe D. Davis accused hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs of paying $1 million for the killing of rap icon Tupac Shakur. According to the court documents, Davis claims Combs paid Eric Von Martin the money. He's accused of orchestrating the plot to kill Shakur on September 7th, 1996, near the Strip.
Audio evidence has been submitted in court against a man pending trial for the unsolved Tupac case, which discusses a financial agreement between Puffy and the Southside Compton Crips to put money forward in going towards eliminating Tupac and Suge Knight. The audio evidence has further been tied into a check which had been used to buy a nightclub in New York after the Crips had been stiffed for the money. The financial records of the nightclub, which link back to the check, may, if looked into by investigators, tie back into the paper trail which evidence submitted in court claims links Puffy into funding the Southside Compton Crips to eliminate Tupac. The nightclub, which the check had been used to purchase after keeping it from the Southside Compton Crips, is now a vacant church. The audio evidence submitted in court links the check to a Harlem hustler called Eric Zip Martin, who was believed to have been given a check to deliver it to the Southside Compton Crips, but had kept it for himself to buy a nightclub called the Zip Code. In this video, we're going to try and track down the financial records of the nightclub, including the details of the check which was used to purchase it, which investigators believe was originally for the Tupac hit. Eric Zip Martin has been tied into the paper trail of the Tupac hit, being in audio evidence submitted into court in 2024. The audio evidence had been submitted against former Southside Compton Crip shot caller Keefe D, who had been arrested for the Tupac case in September of 2023. Keefe D, in audio evidence submitted against him, had detailed his relationship with Harlem hustler Eric Zip Martin. Keefe D revealed that a Santana Block Compton Crip, whose name was redacted in the audio, had been the person who had introduced him to Zip. Keefe D's 2019 book Compton Street Legend had claimed that he had met Zip in either 1990 or 91, being at an annual game of baseball between the Southside Compton Crips and the Santana Block Compton Crips. Former LAPD detective Greg Kading's 2015 murder rap documentary had released police reports which claimed Eric Zip Martin would play as the pitcher for the Santana Block Compton Crips, being in the neighborhood baseball games against the Southside Compton Crips. The police reports claim the baseball games would take place in South Park in Compton, where wagers of bottles of champagne were put on the games. The Santana Block Compton Crips were a Crip set in Compton, which had been founded by Kim Tate in 1978, but after being taken out in the same year, Kenneth Johnson, also known as OG Turtle, had then become the leader of the Santana Block Compton Crips. The police reports released in the murder rap documentary has redacted the name of the Santana Block Compton Crip, who Zip had been associated to in Compton. The Santana Block Compton Crip and Keefe D were then reported as traveling to Eric Zip Martin's Jersey City property on the East Coast. Keefe D, in an audio submitted against him in court, claimed himself acting on behalf of the Southside Compton Crips, had a deal brokered by the Santana Block Compton Crip with Zip, being while they were at the Jersey City property. Keefe D had claimed the deal was to conduct a multi-million-dollar underworld business, which had open transport links between the East Coast and West Coast. Zip drove a bulletproof Mercedes-Benz and operated offices on both coasts. He had been involved legitimately in the music industry and illegitimately in underworld circles. Zip on the legit side had owned a record label called Black Rock Records and also co-executive produced records with Blackground Records boss Barry Hankerson, who had been the uncle to Aaliyah. Aaliyah had once been signed to Zip's label Black Rock Records. Zip had also co-executive produced a soundtrack for the 2001 movie called Exit Wounds. Zip had also owned several nightclubs on the East Coast. One of these nightclubs would later be tied into the check, which was believed to have been the $1 million bounty on Tupac's life. Keefe D, in an audio submitted against him in court, had claimed Zip had introduced him to Puffy between 91 and 92, being while Puffy was working for Uptown Records by Andre Harrell. He had claimed in an audio that this had taken place at the Paradise 24 club on Santa Monica Boulevard, which he had been invited to by Zip. Keefe D in his book had put forward a different location of where he had met Puffy through Zip, as he had claimed it was at a party at the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles, being where Zip had invited him to, where he had then met Puffy. Puffy had soon launched his own label Bad Boy in 1992 and later discovered rapper Biggie Smalls. Zip had been the godfather of Biggie's son. On the illegitimate side, Zip had not only have been reported as hustling in New York and having the trade routes with Los Angeles, but he was also alleged to have been involved in the extortion of celebrities. Mike Tyson revealed in an interview with internet platform Vlad TV that Zip had extorted boxing promoter Don King out of $600,000. Tyson revealed how he had been with Don King, who had brought with him $600,000 in a bag. Tyson claimed Zip had arrived and had discovered what was inside the bag, to which Zip had Don King escorted outside the room. Tyson claimed Don King had tried to take the money with him, claiming he had to go visit the World Boxing Council. However, Zip had people to escort Don King outside the room and had then locked the door on him. Tyson reported Zip as then opening up the bag and began throwing the money round in a celebration, being after successfully stealing it off of Don King. Zip's connection into the alleged check, which was said to be used as the bounty to take out Tupac, had also been affiliated to Jimmy Henchman. Zip was doing business with Jimmy Henchman in the music industry, as they had co-executive produced records together. Jimmy Henchman is currently serving life in prison for different charges. One is for being found guilty of alleged to have been behind financing a hit of 50 Cent affiliate Lodi Mac in 2009. Jimmy Henchman, like Zip, had been involved in both legitimate and illegitimate businesses on the East Coast. The DEA claimed Henchman had been involved in the criminal underworld in New York, being under the same crimes as Zip, which Henchman is now serving life in prison for. Henchman had founded the music conference called How Can I Be Down in 1992, with this marking his start of becoming involved in the music industry. Henchman began to manage several artists in the 90s, including Salt and Pepper and Lil Sean. Henchman was also believed to be extorting several figures in the entertainment industry. Andre Harrell of Uptown Records was said to have been being extorted by Henchman, as well as Puffy from Bad Boy Records and Mobb Deep of 4th and Broadway Records. Dexter Isaac, who is currently serving a life sentence, had testified against Jimmy Henchman in court. Isaac claimed to have been hired by Jimmy Henchman to carry out the 1994 robbery of Tupac. Dexter Isaac, using a writer, had published a book in 2012 called From Friends to Enemies. The book claimed to have revealed Jimmy Henchman's connection into Puffy's label Bad Boy. Anthony Wolf Jones was a gangster from the Bronx Valley mob who had become Puffy's bodyguard in the 90s. Dexter Isaac in his book claimed that Isaac himself had once approached Wolf to assist him with robbing Puffy in a Tunnel nightclub in New York. Isaac claimed to have been told by Wolf not to follow through with it as Puffy had a pass, being due to Wolf's investments in Bad Boy. Isaac's book made claims that after Bad Boy artist Biggie Smalls had been sued by a 14-year-old rapper with the same name being under copyright infringement, causing Biggie to change his name to the Notorious B.I.G., Wolf and his associates had helped with paying off the lawsuit and became a minority owner of Bad Boy as a result. Isaac's book made claims that Jimmy Henchman had then cut a deal with Wolf regarding the artists of Bad Boy. The book claimed the deal between Wolf and Henchman had been that Henchman would act as a recruiter of artists for Bad Boy, where he would then be granted a large finder fee paid by the label, as well as management commission from each artist recruited. The book had further claimed that while Tupac was in New York filming for the movie Above the Rim, Henchman approached him several times in attempts to sign him to Bad Boy. Isaac had claimed Henchman had offered to provide Tupac security for the movie set, but Tupac had turned it down. Jimmy Henchman had been managing Salt and Pepper and had been behind several of their songs such as Shoop. Henchman had gotten Tupac to star in a Salt and Pepper music video for Waterman. Isaac claimed Henchman had owed Tupac money from this. Isaac had included in his book how Henchman had offered Tupac a check for payment, but Tupac had turned it down, asking for cash instead. Henchman was then said to have never have provided the cash and still owed Tupac the money. Isaac's book had also claimed that Henchman had been promised by Wolf a large recruitment and commission payment if he could persuade or pressure Tupac into signing to Bad Boy. Mopreme Shakur, being Tupac's brother, had revealed that the offer had been given to Tupac to sign with Bad Boy, and Tupac had been ready to sign the deal until finding out details about the label which made him back out. Tupac would later claim in a 1996 interview with Sway that the East Coast rappers were being extorted by the gangsters, and in his own words, he came in and effed up everything.
The East Coast dealers got them as extortion. I came and f***ed up everything.
Dexter Isaac revealed in his book how himself and an associate called JD had been hired by Jimmy Henchman in 1994 in order to rob Tupac at Quad Recording Studio in Manhattan. Tupac's friend Stretch was also alleged to have been involved in a setup. Dexter Isaac had revealed that no money was paid up front, but they had been promised to get paid in the sale of jewelry which they robbed. Henchman was alleged to have told the robbers not to open fire on Tupac and make sure to take a $35,000 ring which Tupac had purchased from the Diamond District in New York. Dexter Isaac, when leaving the meeting to plot against Tupac, had claimed Puffy had been walking in to meet Henchman directly afterwards as they were leaving. Isaac had claimed Puffy knew about the plot which was going to take place. Henchman was also reported as inviting a large number of Uptown Records employees to the studio in order to make an example out of Tupac. Puffy had been in a studio session with Andre Harrell of Uptown, who was also said to have been being extorted by Henchman. Puffy's artist Biggie was also at the studio in a different room, being with his group Junior Mafia. Dexter Isaac claimed Henchman believed that the robbery could lure Tupac into accepting a protection offer which Henchman had previously given him, adding he could pressure Tupac into signing with Bad Boy as he had promised Wolf, and then receive a large payment from the arrangement. Tupac had been invited to the studio by Henchman, where he had been offered $7,000 for a feature verse in order to appear on a song with Henchman's artist Lil Sean. Tupac, knowing Henchman already owed him money, had accepted the proposition. Tupac went to the studio with his road manager Freddie Moore and Randy Stretch Walker. Tupac, while he was heading to the studio, had constantly been asked about his whereabouts by a rapper who was with Lil Sean at the studio. Dexter Isaac alleged that during this time, Stretch had been giving information back to the robbers in order to assist with the setup. When entering the studio, a person wearing camo fatigues as well as a person reading a newspaper had gone on to approach Tupac to rob him. Tupac had reached for a piece he was carrying, causing the robbers to open fire on him, with medical records showing he had been hit 5 times. The robbers had taken $40,000 worth of jewelry, including the biggest diamond ring worth $35,000. Tupac, in the immediate aftermath, had rode the elevator up to the studios which Puffy and Biggie were in, where he had claimed they looked at him as if they'd seen a ghost. Dexter Isaac revealed after returning to Jimmy Henchman once the robbery was carried out, he had been paid $2,500 by Jimmy Henchman, being for the jewelry which he had robbed off of Tupac. Isaac revealed how Henchman had kept the biggest diamond ring they had robbed from Tupac for himself. Henchman had told them that he was going to use the diamond stone in the ring, being for a new setting for his girlfriend Cynthia Reed. Tupac, while he was recovering, was taking refuge at actress Jasmine Guy's house, where Stretch began relaying information back from Jimmy Henchman to Tupac. Tupac's artist Napoleon, who had been with him at the time, found this strange as Stretch was supposed to be Tupac's friend, but was giving him information from the person who had set him up. Jimmy Henchman had given a message through Stretch to Tupac, which was not to go to war unless he had his money right. Henchman had claimed the robbery was orchestrated to humble Tupac. Dexter Isaac claimed it had been carried out for Henchman to try and pressure Tupac into signing to Bad Boy. Tupac from the incident had held a grudge against Biggie and Puffy, feeling as if they knew he was going to get set up, or at least did not help him afterwards. Puffy was then said to have been responsible for the release of Biggie's song Who Shot Ya, which, although was said to have been written prior to the robbery, was said to have been marketed as a Tupac diss by Puffy. Tupac had addressed Puffy's extortion rumors on wax in relation to the robbery, being in his 1996 song Against All Odds, with the lyrics being, quote, "Puffy getting robbed like a bitch. To hide that fact, he did some shit he shouldn't have did, so he riding for that," unquote. Puffy, in the same year as the robbery, had expanded his relationship with the Southside Compton Crips, as he began to hire them to provide cars for music videos in Los Angeles. P.Diddy, in an audio submitted against him in court, had claimed that Puffy had used the Southside Compton Car Club in 1994 in order to hire a lowrider to use it in Usher's debut music video which Puffy had starred in. The Southside Compton Car Club were Crips said to own an auto shop with access to 37 cars. The Southside Compton Car Club charged Puffy $2,400 to use the lowrider for a day, which had been placed on a tow truck to Hollywood and escorted by Crips. P.Diddy claimed Usher had scratched a car while performing with it in a video, and Puffy had been charged an extra $4,400 for damages. Tupac was locked up in early 1995 where he had heard Who Shot You over the radio, and inmates began to tell him that Biggie and Puffy had set him up. West Coast record executive Suge Knight of Death Row Records had sent Tupac a bulletproof vest with the Death Row logo on it following the robbery, and had told him, "Don't get scared now." Suge Knight had been visiting Tupac in prison on the East Coast and had his recording contract from Interscope updated, which was to fulfill a 3-album deal making music with Death Row Records in return for putting up $1.2 million in bail money in order to give Tupac his freedom. Suge Knight, however, had loaned this money from their distributor Interscope, which had been generated from Tupac's album Me Against the World, which became the first album in history to go to #1 while the artist had been behind bars. Tupac had told Suge Knight about what had occurred in New York, and Suge Knight sided with Tupac knowing he would soon be released in joining Death Row Records. Suge Knight was friendly with Puffy up until 1995, being after he had sided with Tupac. Suge Knight may have also been interfering with the money which Jimmy Henchman was said to have been skimming off of Uptown Records from Andre Harrell. Suge Knight had strong-armed Uptown Records to correct the contracts of Mary J. Blige and Jodeci, as he had had their contracts reviewed to see that Uptown Records were treating them unfairly financially. Therefore, if Henchman had been extorting Andre Harrell for money from the artists of Uptown, then Suge Knight would have been interfering with this. Peter Shue, an alleged arms dealer from the Bronx who would also have been a party promoter who had hosted 90s R&B acts, was said to have warned Suge Knight over doing this to Andre Harrell, and had told him there would be a problem if he were to do it again on the East Coast, and had mentioned the name of Eric B. Suge Knight would go on to form Death Row East with Eric B. and had signed former Bad Boy artist Craig Mack. Suge Knight claimed in a 2017 prison interview that his intention was to sign Biggie away from Bad Boy under Death Row. Suge Knight at the August 3rd, 1995 Source Awards held in Madison Square Garden had a cardboard cutout of Tupac placed inside a cell, which Death Row had been using in their set design. While accepting an award, Suge had given a shout out to Tupac and had then dissed Puffy, hinting that Biggie should sign to Death Row. Dexter Isaac in his book had claimed that Jimmy Henchman through Zip had gotten the Southside Compton Crips to start providing protection for Bad Boy in California. P.Diddy, in an audio submitted against him in court, claimed that Zip had called him just prior to the KMEL Summer Jam on August 13th, 1995. The event which Bad Boy were performing at had been taking place in California 10 days after Suge Knight had dissed them at the Source Awards. P.Diddy had claimed he had asked Zip for Puffy to give them 40 tickets for the show in order to provide protection against Suge Knight. Suge Knight was associated to the Compton MOB Pyrus, which had placed a specific set of the Mob Piru and the Southside Compton Crips against each other. Former Compton cops claimed in a Vlad TV video that the Southside Compton Crips had graffitied a mural of Biggie being on one of the public restrooms in South Park. South Park was the park in Compton where P.Diddy and Zip had met. Puffy and Biggie were reported as hanging out there when they would travel to Los Angeles, being accompanied by the Southside Compton Crips. P.Diddy's nephew, Southside Compton Crip Orlando Anderson, as well as fellow Southsider Corey Edwards, had been identified by an Atlanta deputy called C.J. Howard as being with Puffy at Jermaine Dupri's birthday party at the Platinum House nightclub in Atlanta, being a month later in September of '95. Suge Knight was also at the party with his friend Jake Robles, who was a Campanella Park Piru from Compton. Jake Robles was taken out outside the nightclub after they had gotten into an altercation with Puffy and Anthony Wolf Jones. Tupac was bailed out of prison a month later under the money put forward by Suge Knight, which Suge had gotten loaned from Interscope for Tupac to then start making music with Death Row. Death Row had thrown a Christmas party in the Hollywood Hills, being just prior to Christmas of '95. At the party, they had spotted a producer associated to Bad Boy called Mark Anthony Bell. Tupac and Suge Knight had cornered the producer inside a room, where Suge claimed he made him drink pee out of champagne glasses in order to try and pressure him into giving over Puffy's family's details in Los Angeles. P.Diddy claimed that the Southside Compton Crips had been invited to another one of Puffy's concerts in Anaheim, California, being just after the Mark Anthony Bell incident had taken place. Biggie's group artist Lil C's, in his police interview with former LAPD detective Greg Kading, had identified P.Diddy and the Southside Compton Crips as being backstage at the Anaheim concert. P.Diddy claimed Puffy had invited the Crips back to a hotel room after party, where P.Diddy alleged Puffy for the very first time had openly announced he would put money forward to eliminate Tupac and Suge Knight. P.Diddy was supplying security for the Shrine Auditorium in March of 1996, as the Soul Train Music Awards was being held there, which both Bad Boy and Death Row were attending. Former Compton cop Reggie Wright Jr., who had been Death Row's head of security, had revealed that he had worked with P.Diddy to put a stop to a plan which Suge Knight had put into motion, which was going to pull Biggie off of the stage. Suge Knight had around 30 Pyrus all dressed in P-Funk shirts representing Pyru, who had planned to pull Biggie off of the stage at the event. Reggie Wright Jr. had informed P.Diddy about the plot, and P.Diddy restricted the entrance of the Pyrus, therefore putting a stop to the plot. Puffy's former bodyguard Gene Deal had claimed that Puffy had run from Suge Knight and Tupac after they were seen approaching in a backstage corridor. Tupac and Biggie got into a confrontation at the entrance of the venue, but the Fruits of Islam security service had stood in and broken it up. Gene Deal claimed he witnessed Puffy after the event, wished that something would happen to Tupac and Suge Knight. Tupac released a diss track towards Biggie and Puffy in June of 1996 called Hit 'Em Up. Tupac claimed to have gotten with Biggie's wife Faith Evans, being after they had recorded a song together for his 1996 album All Eyes on Me. He had also featured impersonators of Biggie and Puffy in the music video. Suge Knight was also alleged to have gotten with Puffy's baby mother Misa Halton, with this photo showing Suge Knight playing with Puffy's son Justin. Suge Knight also starred on an unreleased magazine cover with Misa and Puffy's son, with it reading, "What the East Coast won't take care of, the West Coast will." Dexter Isaac in his book had claimed Puffy had made sure to have gotten the pictures so they were never made public, which he further alleged caused Puffy to put a bounty on Death Row Chains. Police reports, which were included in the Murder Rap documentary, claim there had been a $5,000 bounty on Death Row Chains to the Crips from Puffy. A beef in Compton had started between Suge Knight's MOB Pyrus and the Southside Compton Crips, which had occurred in July of 1996 after P.Diddy's nephew Orlando Anderson, as well as the Southside Compton Crips, had attempted to rob Suge Knight MOB associate Trayvon Lane for his Death Row chain, being in the Lakewood Mall in California. The chain incident was tied into the bounty rumors which were said to have been put on them by Puffy. P.Diddy, in his recorded confession, which has been submitted in court as evidence against him, claimed to have been invited to the Greenblatt Deli in Los Angeles by Zip, being in the summer of 1996. P.Diddy went on to say that he had met Zip there, who had been with Puffy, and alleged that Puffy had taken him to a downstairs area, where he was alleged to have put forward $1 million bounty to the Southside Compton Crips, in order to take out Suge Knight and Tupac. In P.Diddy's book Compton Street Legend, P.Diddy claimed Puffy would refer to Suge Knight as the Big CEO, claiming he told him he had a problem with the Big CEO and Tupac which needed taking care of. P.Diddy alleged $1 million bounty was agreed upon, and Zip had also known about the bounty. P.Diddy and his nephew Orlando Anderson, as well as Southside Compton Crips Terrence Brown and DeAndre Smith, had been in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996, in order to watch a Mike Tyson fight in at MGM Grand. Tupac and Suge Knight, as well as the Compton MOB Pyru associates, had also travelled to Las Vegas to watch the fight. After the fight had finished, when Tupac and Suge Knight, as well as the Pyrus, were in the lobby leaving, Pyru Trayvon Lane, who had an attempt on snatching his chain by Orlando Anderson, which had been connected into the Puffy bounty rumors, had seen Orlando Anderson standing in the lobby and had pointed him out to Tupac and Suge Knight, telling them he's a Crip associated to Puffy. Tupac and Suge Knight, as well as the Pyrus, had then ran over and rushed Orlando Anderson. P.Diddy in an audio claimed that a 118 East Coast Block Crip came over to him while he was at the Rainforest Cafe in the MGM Grand in order to tell him Orlando Anderson had just been jumped by Death Row. P.Diddy in an audio claimed that he had met Zip outside, who had then given him a piece and told him it was the perfect opportunity to claim the $1 million bounty. Keefe further claimed that while traveling in a white Cadillac rented under the name of Terrence Brown's mother-in-law, they had seen Tupac and Suge Knight in a BMW. Keefe had stated that the Cadillac had rolled up to the BMW, and Keefe had handed the piece from Zip to Orlando Anderson in order to carry out the hit. Keefe had told investigators that after returning to Los Angeles following the Tupac incident, he had met Zip in a hot wings restaurant to discuss the financial situation. He claimed while there, Zip had talked to Puffy and Faith Evans over the phone, who had asked Zip was that ass in reference to the Tupac hit, with Zip telling them it was. Keefe had claimed to have met up with Zip 6 weeks later, where he had asked Zip about the $1 million, but Zip had told him he hadn't received it yet and would give it to the Crips once he'd been given it. Puffy's former bodyguard Gene Dill has claimed in several different interviews to have seen what he believes was the $1 million check, acting as the bounty for the Tupac hit. He claims Zip had been bragging about having a $1 million check, taking it out of his right back pocket. Gene claimed to have found out that the check had come from Jimmy Henchman, which had been written from background records of Barry Hankerson. Henchman, Hankerson and Zip had all been in business together in the co-executive production of songs. Further information alluded that the check was disguised as a management commission check for artist Tank. The $1 million check was alleged to have really meant to go to the Southside Compton Crips given to Zip by Jimmy Henchman, for Zip to then give it to Keefe D through his association. Keefe D, in an audio submitted against him as evidence, claimed to have met with Puffy's assistant Darius D. Mac Rogers, who had told him that Puffy had given Zip the check, but Zip didn't forward it to the Crips. Keefe further claimed in the audio it caused Puffy and Zip to fall out over the situation. Keefe D had further claimed while he was in prison in 1998 for an unrelated matter, the FBI had spoken to him and told him that they had traced the check, which revealed Zip had used it to buy a nightclub in Harlem called the Zip Code. A government task force headed by former LAPD detective Greg Kading had also made the same claims that it had been found that the check had been used by Zip to buy the Zip Code. This parallels what Zip had done to Don King in keeping a $600K for himself, but this time keeping a $1 million check from Jimmy Henchman, which was meant to go to the Southside Compton Crips, but Zip kept it for himself and purchased the nightclub. The nightclub was located on 2207 Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard in Harlem. The building was first built in 1910 and is 115 years old. The building had first opened as the Glad Tidings Tabernacle, being a Pentecostal church. The property was sold to Zip between 1996 and 1997, being from the World Assemblies of God Fellowship behind Glad Tidings, who had received a $1 million check from Zip. This footage from the year 2000 inside the Zip Code shows guest stars such as Stevie Wonder making a club appearance for Zip. Zip had the property as the Zip Code for around a decade, and raised the property value to $2,078,550, which Zip had then sold in 2007 to hotel developers. In 2011, the property was then sold back to the Glad Tidings Ministry, being after a scandal had occurred with the church. The Glad Tidings franchise also had a building in Tribeca, whose pastor Carl Keys had been discovered as defrauding several charities out of $1.2 million, being which he had made through the church. After being discovered for an investigation by the Attorney General, the franchise had sold the Tribeca property for $4.5 million and had then purchased the Zip Code building from the hotel developers. The property had been sold again 4 years later in 2015, being to Miami pastor Rich Wilkerson of the Trinity Church. The pastor seeked to restore the church to its previous state, outlining the air conditioner had been riddled with bullet holes, being from his time as the zip code. By 2019, the church had became vacant and was put up for sale in 2023, valued at $2.4 million. The financial records of the purchase of the club are 3 owners removed from the $1 million check put forward by Zip, which had believed to have been initially the bounty for Tupac's life. The information gathered surrounding the check alleges that Jimmy Henchman had financed Tupac to be set up twice, with the first being the 1994 robbery, followed by the 1996 hit financing the Southside Compton Crips, being through Zip and Puffy's association. P.Diddy had been set up in a sting operation in 2008, being by a government task force headed by former LAPD detective Greg Kading. The task force was set up in response to Biggie's family suing the LAPD for $500 million, being based on reports that officers may have been involved in an unsolved Biggie case. As the Southside Compton Crips were reported to have been involved with Puffy, and had also been linked into the Tupac case through the Orlando Anderson footage, the task force had seen P.Diddy as a person of interest. He had been set up in a sting operation and faced either 25 years in prison or could accept a proffer agreement and discuss the Tupac and Biggie cases. A proffer agreement gives immunity to someone to discuss crimes, but the immunity is only valid between the person and the task force. The immunity can be broken if the person speaks of the crimes outside the agreement. P.Diddy agreed to talk and had been secretly recorded by the task force, which had then been released in Greg Kading's 2015 documentary called Murder Rap. P.Diddy had been used by the government task force in 2008, where he had worn a wire against Zip to try and set him up in a sting operation. The task force escorted P.Diddy to the Zip Code nightclub, and P.Diddy had met Zip there while wearing a wire and tried to get him to incriminate himself on tape. The operation had went nowhere and P.Diddy denies that he'd worn a wire. P.Diddy had started doing interviews as early as 2018, where he had repeated the claims of being financed by Puffy to carry out the Tupac hit. P.Diddy had released a book, Compton Street Legend, in 2019, where he had gone into detail about his relationship with Puffy. In September of 2023, P.Diddy had been arrested in connection to the Tupac case, being due to him breaking his proffer agreement by going on public platforms and repeating the claims. The full unedited audio tape, which had been recorded by the task force, had been submitted against P.Diddy as evidence in January of 2024. P.Diddy in the audio implicated Puffy and Zip as being involved in handling the alleged finances for the Tupac hit. Puffy has been mentioned over 75 times in court documents of P.Diddy's case, being in relation to financing the Tupac hit. P.Diddy in new court documents has claimed that Puffy was alleged to have additionally scheduled a call with the alleged driver of the Cadillac, Terrence Brown, to give more information about the payment. P.Diddy revealed in an audio submitted against him that he had called and left several messages at Puffy's Daddy House recording studio in New York, asking about where the money was. Tupac's family hired lawyer Alex Spiro in October of 2024 in order to investigate if Puffy had financed P.Diddy. In January of 2025, prosecutors filed a 180-page document which included P.Diddy's questioning with Las Vegas PD, where when asked if Puffy had been involved in the Tupac case, P.Diddy replied with he had. Transcripts further show P.Diddy claimed that Puffy, in a room of around 45 people, had gone on a tirade about the $1 million bounty. In this video, we took a look into the $1 million check, which was believed to have been behind the hit on Tupac. The check was reported as coming from Jimmy Henchman, who is said to have been in business with Puffy's bodyguard Anthony Wolf Jones, who Dexter Isaac had stated was a minority owner of Bad Boy. Henchman was then said to have given the check to Zip, for Zip to give it to the Southside Compton Crips for his affiliation, but had kept it for himself to buy the zip code. The financial records show the club is 3 owners detached from the $1 million check, which was believed to have been the bounty for the Tupac hit. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, smash the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and press that bell button so you can get all the future notifications for when I upload. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.